Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Finance and Government Operations Committee meeting on September 27th, 2021. I call this meeting to order. Councillor Harris is going to be excused from today's meeting, and all other committee members should be present shortly. We're still waiting on Councillor Borrego. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on a video or audio conference. We appreciate your patience as FGO meetings are conducted this way. Written comments were received for today's meetings and were provided to members of the committee. Members of the public have the opportunity to address the committee if they have signed up for live public comment per the rules published on our agenda and on our website on Friday. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the availability to view this meeting live through YouTube and Zoom webinar. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. And for those watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us. We will go ahead and start with public comment. First, I want to confirm, Mr. Moya, we do have people signed up to speak and present, right?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, perfect. So I will go ahead and read a little bit for those of you who are planning to speak. Thank you for joining us to provide your public comment. If you're watching the YouTube live feed for this meeting, please mute or turn it off at this time. Here are the public comment ground rules. Comments are to be addressed to the committee members only. Each participant will have 1.5 minutes to present. Any disruptive comment or conduct will result in removal from the Zoom meeting room. There will be a 1.5 minute time limit, and the timer will start once you begin speaking. Then the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, will let you know when your time is up. Mr. Moya, if you will please call the name of the first speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first speaker is Andrew Schultz. Mr. Schultz, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, members of the council. My name is Andrew Schultz. I'm an attorney here in Albuquerque. I represent a group that has an intimate involvement with the proposal before the council dealing with the proposed changes to the Albuquerque Tax Preparer and Consumer Rights Ordinance. And at the request of Councillor Davis, I will reserve the rest of my time to respond to questions at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Real quick, I do want to say welcome to Councillor Borrego, who has joined us. We started just a little bit before you got here, so good afternoon.
Our next speaker is Nick Mattinson. Mr. Mattinson, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the council. My name is Nick Madison. I'm a private attorney working at a small consumer protection firm called Pfefferman, Warren, and Madison here in Albuquerque. Previously worked as a legal aid attorney, and in both of those jobs, I had a lot of experience with people who felt victimized by tax preparers. And for that reason, I just wanted to voice my strong support for the ordinance that was passed by the City Council. I also support the changes that the city has proposed to that ordinance, but I know that when amendments to an ordinance are proposed, it's a risky time, and it's a time when the industry may try to cut back on the effectiveness of an ordinance like this one, and I want to urge the council not to cut back on the effectiveness of this ordinance. And one of the ways that I think that the council has to be particularly wary is in cutbacks on the ability of individuals to bring private cases to enforce the ordinance, and also the ability of the city to enforce this ordinance. I think that the council should be very suspicious if industry suggests that they're okay with certain restrictions, but they want to cut back on enforcement of those restrictions. That suggests to me that the industry is not actually interested in complying with them. And as a consumer protection attorney, I know that the availability of private rights of action and the availability of city enforcement for all provisions of a statute is really important to making sure that that statute is effectively enforced. So I would just urge the council, while I think the amendments are appropriate, to make sure that we don't get rid of these protections that are so crucial to so many people here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we had 3 others sign up to speak, but they haven't showed up to the meeting yet. So that will conclude public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moya. Mr. Copen, are you here to speak on behalf of something upcoming?
Yes, ma'am, for the Addison lease application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, it looks like someone's raising their hand. The attendees, maybe they may have joined under a different name for public comment. Do you mind if I just ask them who they are?
Go ahead, please do.
Can the person identified as A1145372 just identify yourselves?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm not sure if the video is on. My name is Cecilia Ubel and I'm with H&R Block.
Okay, great. I'm gonna promote you to a panelist. And then once you can turn your video on and you start speaking, we'll start the timer. Ms. Ubel, go ahead and start your comments.
Wait, Ms.
You-
Ubel, I think you're
you're
muted.
Madam members of the committee, my name is. I manage 21 of the H&R Block tax preparation offices across the city. Each year, we help tens of Albuquerque residents file and receive their benefits. I'm here to talk today about the tax preparation ordinance and the need for additional changes to the bill just put forth by the city. I've seen firsthand this tax season how several problems with the new ordinance are hurting my tax preparers and the taxpayers we serve. I want to share 3 different examples. Number 1, the many disclosures preparers must deliver are redundant and time-consuming to our clients, adding up to 20 minutes to their tax prep experience. That's time residents are taken out of their day and they can't spend working or caring for their children. Wouldn't it make sense to waive these when duplicate disclosures are already being provided? Number 2, preparers are confused about which taxpayers are covered under this ordinance. Wouldn't it make sense to provide us with better clarity? Number 3, preparers will also face unfair fines and lawsuits for minor errors without even being given the chance to fix the complaints. That's devastating to the businesses and burdensome to consumers. Wouldn't it make sense to put in place a more common sense way to enforce the ordinance? Unfortunately, the city's bill before you today doesn't go far enough to address these concerns. I see every day how my tax preparers at H&R Block truly put their customers first.
Thank you,
asked-
ma'am. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, now that concludes public comments.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moya. We will move on to agenda item A, which is EC 431, approval of an application for state grid modernization grant. I move approval. I see a second from Councilor Senna. And are there any questions or comments? I have a question for the administration regarding this. Well, there we go. Hello, administration. In the staff write-up, I did see that there's a comment about PNM and their concern for an EC or about this EC as far as security measures. And I'm just wondering, what's the plan to make sure that there's not a potential vector for cyber attack against the city if we were to go this way?
Madam Chair, we have Mr. Ismail. He's on the line from DMD that can answer that question.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, council members. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to ask that question. So to get approved for that grant from the state, we had to run through a PNM's approval, and we got PNM's approved on the grid modernization before we submitted all our documents to the state. So PNM are aware about this project.
Thank you, Mr. Ismail. I know that it just seems that there was apparently a letter that was given in the application, issued a letter of concern, and it's in our packet. The letter requests that Mount Vector install the appropriate security in the brain system to protect against it becoming a vector for cyber attack against the city's energy systems. Do we have a plan for making sure that we have some extra security, or has that been worked out?
Yes, so we had run it through our IT department. We went through cybersecurity, we went through TRC, ASC, and got approved and recommended. And it's part of the project to be more safe and more secure. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Counselors, any other additional questions or comments?
I was just going to say that's a great question, Counselor, because about 3 years ago, I think it was, that we were attacked and some people got into our financial system and paid themselves in a large amount of money. So I think that's a really good question.
Thank you. And is it Miss Hinojos tonight or?
Yes, I'm here, Counselor.
Awesome, thank you. If you will please take a vote.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Peña.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Basan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Madam
you.
Chair,
Yes, Director.
we're asking for immediate action on this if we could, please.
Yes, sir. That's next on the list. Thank you so much. I will move immediate action.
Second.
Thank you. And I see also a hand raised from Counselor Sena. Miss Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Peña,
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Basan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item B is EC 432, the mayor's recommendation of architectural consultants for Biopark Aquatics Sharks Quarantine Facility. I move approval. Counselor Sena, thank you for the second. Counselors, any questions or comments? No? Again, I think I have a question. Ms. Schultz, are you here?
Madam Chair, yes, I am. Hello.
Hello, this is the one we were talking about earlier, correct?
Madam Chair, yes, it is. The one we spoke about on the phone just a few hours ago, yeah.
Thank you for setting me straight and keeping me on track. So I think I'm going to choose to reserve my questions for another time, but we can go ahead and take a vote on this.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Peña,
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Basan.
Yes,
That passes unanimously.
thank you. Let's keep those poor sick marine animals safe. Thank you, Director. Okay, moving on to EC 433 is building lease and agreement between the City of Albuquerque and ADA-CEN LLC. Unless that's not an acronym. My apologies if it isn't. I move approval. Thank you so much. I see Counselor Sena and Peña. Thank you for the second. Director Allen, would you like to share about this at all, or?
Sure. Thank you, counselors. Counselor Basan, Madam Chair. This building lease and agreement will allow Addison a new company in Albuquerque to lease a 10,000 square foot building that we have on airport property, which is formerly an FAA space. And this agreement will allow them to have a 5-year initial term with a renewal of 10, another 5 years for a total of 10. And that will bring in about $36,600 of income for the aviation department in the first year and in the years following. And today I have with me Carl Copen, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Addison, to talk to you all and give you a little bit of information about their company. Welcome, Mr. Copen.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Carl Copen. As Ms. Allen indicated, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Addison. I have a short, just a written statement we're happy to enter into the record. And before I read that, I just want to make a note of how fantastic Ms. Allen and Lisa Leyva have been at the Albuquerque Airport to work with us and help us relocate from Silver Spring, Maryland to here in Albuquerque. So I have a short statement. I'll read this and take any questions you have after that. Addison LLC is a data center developer and operator based in Silver Spring, Maryland, and will transition its headquarters to Albuquerque. Addison has elected to lease the former FAA Flight Service Station building at 3500 Access Road C Southeast at the Sunport. This building is ideal for Addison as it is already configured to support IT operations such as computer cooling systems, backup generators, network connectivity, and other features. Addison will remodel the facility to support its operations, as well as bring restrooms, entrances, and other building features up to the latest ADA regulations and codes. Upon completion of the remodel, Addison will transition its headquarters operation to the Albuquerque office, where it will serve its commercial and government customers. Once operational, the Albuquerque office will serve as the test and evaluation site as Addison explores new data center technologies, including an emphasis on the use of renewable energies and computer cooling technologies that vastly reduce water use when compared to existing data center operations. Addison's managing member is Bob Henley, a proven IT industry veteran, and the chairman of Addison's board is retired Lieutenant General John M. Davis, a career Marine pilot and former deputy commander for both the JFCC Network Warfare and later as a lieutenant general of the U.S. Cyber Command at Fort Meade, Maryland. Addison expects to employ approximately 20 employees in the Albuquerque area within its first year of operation and expanding its employee base to 100 through scale and growth in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Counselors, I'm going to start with offering counselors in the meeting real quick. Any questions or comments about this part of the committee? Okay, Counselor Davis, I know that you are here joining us as a guest, and thank you for spending your evening with us. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hopefully it's not an evening for the rest of you. I think most of my items are at least on the front half. So I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Coppen and the team from Addison. It's been an exciting process, and I hope and have on good authority that there may be a lot more to come from our company. But I think we ought to take a good look at what's working in Albuquerque when we're recruiting firms like this, like Addison, with their strong national security background, their strong tech background, and why they chose Albuquerque. It's a great conversation. If you haven't had it, we're excited to have them. I hope this committee will approve that. And kudos to Ms. Allen and our EDD team as well for their work in helping to make these folks feel at home. So I hope this committee will do so. And those of us in District 6 look forward to all of their new employees finding their homes in the Southeast, including Carl, who I know is anxious to relocate from Rio Rancho right there to the heart of Southeast Heights as soon as we get this building done.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Borrego?
Yeah, I just want to welcome this company to Albuquerque, and we look forward to working with you. We're glad not to see vacant buildings, and really excited to see reuse for new companies. So we look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you very much.
There are no further questions or comments. Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Peña,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. And I want to just go back and say my apologies to Director Sanchez for not calling on her to speak about our previous bill. I did make sure that she was okay with us moving on. But just to let you know, I did not intentionally skip over you. My apologies. We'll move on to agenda item D, which is EC 434, FY21 year-end update, Goal 8, Objective 7, Energy and Sustainability Division Goals. I move approval. Thank you, Counselor Sena, for that second. Counselors, any questions or comments? All right, Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Peña,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Moving on to agenda item E is EC 435, FY21, Goal 8, Objective 15, Cost Benefit Review for the city training. I move a receipt be noted. Thank you for the second, Counselor Sena, Counselor Peña. And are there any questions or comments, counselors? Counselor Sena?
Yeah, so this is for the training. If I can actually have someone present on this, is there someone from HR? Oh, I see Director Romero. Yeah, can you just give a brief overview of this, just for the benefit of the committee and for those watching?
Sure, Chairwoman Bassan and Councillor Sena. We conducted an analysis of the amount of training done both externally and internally. Tom Darling is the leader over at the Employee Learning Center with the HR team, and him and his group provided some data for you all to look at just regarding the number of courses offered in training externally and internally. And just we were able to see that the city really does a great job at conducting and giving trainings to employees utilizing city employees. And we found that that is very beneficial, especially in the terms of our employees who are being trained by individuals that work in the city. And so we've learned that a lot of the folks that are giving the training also feel very empowered to share their knowledge and their institutional knowledge with their coworkers and their peers. We do have some departments that require external training, and so those numbers are in there, but you can see basically when we do our average cost per employee training, when we do it internally, is about $13.35 so per employee. So we feel that the Employee Learning Center gives a really good benefit to the city of Albuquerque in terms of training. Tom, did you have anything to add to my comments? I know that he's on a panelist position. There he is.
Hello, everyone. No, I think that was pretty thorough. Obviously, part of the reason why this was done was for us to take a look at the difference between what happens when we contract out to other companies to come in and do training. All the training that is this report is done by the Employee Learning Center. A lot of that training that's in this report is done in-house in each department. We also support those departments' content and other things as well. But I think part of the reason why we really wanted to focus on this was to help everybody see that we are utilizing skilled employees in each department that are certified, that know how to do their job. And the money that we save by doing lots of training internally versus contracting out is very significant to the city.
Madam Chair, if I can follow up. Thank you. So, we've been discussing training a lot, even between our boards and commissions, even with some of the trainings that we're now requiring also of our own city councilors and our mayor and department heads. Is that all tracked? I know I saw that, of course, police and fire tracks differently because they're under much more strenuous tracking of their own trainings and educational learning credits. But do you also track some of that training as well?
We don't track any of the APD or the AFR training. Those are all tracked within their individual academies. But when an AFR employee or an APD employee takes any of the mandatory trainings that are required by the city, like anti-harassment or ethics or any of the trainings that the Employee Learning Centers offers to all employees, we do track those numbers and they are included in our numbers.
Sure. I guess I should clarify my question. So aside from that group,
okay.
For our boards and commissions, do you track their training?
When we do trainings, we have done some trainings for the boards and commissions in conjunction with that office. And when we do that, we do track those numbers. If we're not involved in helping set up that training or manage that training, then we would not be tracking that. That would be tracked by the department that's actually offering those. We are in the process right now, and this has been an ongoing project that we've been doing for the last couple of years. We have a learning management system here at the city called Enterprise Learning Management, which is a PeopleSoft tool. And what we are doing is going through every single department and onboarding all of those departments to start tracking all of their training data in PeopleSoft to get it off the spreadsheets that are in every single department for training. And we were able to make a lot of progress with that during COVID when departments couldn't do face-to-face training and really relied on us to help them deploy that. But all the training that we deliver and support, we do track. And I know that departmental trainings are tracked interdepartmentally. And hopefully in the next year to 2 years, every single training that any employee takes part in will be in their PeopleSoft learning record so that it can be accessed in one spot. And we will have easy access to, and records for that, which is what we're working hard to do.
Okay, so if, say, a board and commission would like to tap into that and utilize that as a resource, would they just reach out to that office?
Yes. The only thing though that the PeopleSoft learning management system, they have to have an employee ID number in order to be tracked in there. So if they don't have an employee ID number, then we will track them digitally in another way. But we can support any of that record keeping for all of those trainings, and that's one of the things that we're committed to do for all departments at the city.
Great, thank you so much. That answers most of my questions. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Councilor Borrego.
Yeah, so I just had a couple of questions. So we used to have a training institute at one time, and Anthony, you may, or Director Romero, you may remember that. And we used to give out certifications when people completed training to show that they actually, completed so many hours or whatever toward whatever the training was. Are we still doing that? Do we still have a system like that? Or has the Institute gone away, or what is the status of that?
The Chairwoman Basan and Councilor Borrego, yeah, I remember that used to be called, that department used to be TOE, Training, Organizational, and Excellence was the name of that group way back then. With the Enterprise Learning Management tool, and I'll let Tom speak a little bit to that also, with that ELM tool, much of the certificates that individuals get at the completion of a course gets emailed to them after it's done. So they're not getting those hard copies. It does get emailed for the majority. I believe, Tom, there are some that are not given the certificate via email, and I don't know if you could explain the reasons for that better than I can.
Sure. So, Councilor Borrego and Madam Chair, we we not only do we use the enterprise learning management, but a lot of our courses that are offered online, and also the face-to-face courses, we do issue completion certificates for every training that we do. If they're in a face-to-face course, they will receive that certificate upon the completion of the course, and it'll be handed to them. When the courses are taken online, part of their completion of that online course, say the anti-harassment discrimination course, when an employee goes through that, or the city operator's permit course, when they go through that, once they've completed all the content, they're digitally issued a certificate, which they can download, print out, and then display or put wherever they want in their record, but it's permanently recorded in their digital record so that we have proof that they actually completed the course. And then they have that. And of course, any courses that require recurring admittance to, like the COP or the anti-harassment or the ethics training course, obviously they will go through the course again. They will be reissued a new certificate with the dates of completion on there. But we do make sure that everybody gets a certificate so that they have proof that they've completed the course and they can have something for their learning record.
And just a follow-up question, Madam Chair. I just wondered, how much are directors encouraging employees to take these trainings? Because I know they have to get approved by their supervisor, right? So I just wonder, how employees find out about the trainings that are available, and, how much directors are actually encouraging them to take those courses.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Abrego, Madam Chair. We work a lot with the directors, particularly there's a number of different programs that we offer. Obviously, our pre-management development program is a year-long leadership development program for employees that they must have their director's recommendation and approval to participate in. And we run about 20 to 30 employees from all departments through that every year. It's a year-long program, 1 day a week for 12 months. But one of the things that obviously we've been really, really pleased about is the level of support that we get from the different departments in getting their employees trained. Obviously, our supervisory development program is a mandatory course for all new supervisors that they must complete within 90 days. We have no problem getting supervisors in there. Sometimes it takes a little longer for them to get into the course just because of the demands of the workload. COVID slowed things down as well. And then lots of our other mandatory courses, we deliver them in such a way now that an employee can do it right from their desk and not have to drive downtown and sit in the classroom to do it. So we've been very, very pleased in the Employee Learning Center with the level of support that we get from the departments and the directors. I've got a really good working relationship with each director, and anytime that we've put out notices for courses, particularly mandatory, and a lot of times a department will actually allow us to come into that department and facilitate a large course of a large number of students so that we can do it all at one time, like lifesavers training, for instance. We work with AFR to provide and record keep for that course as well. We do a lot of scheduling with larger numbers, and so we're very pleased with the level of support we have. Obviously, we can have employees in our office every single day doing training. There's a never-ending amount of training that can be offered. But we want to be obviously responsible and respectful of the work time that all those employees have as well. But we know a trained employee is a more effective and more engaged employee. And so hopefully that answers your question.
And just one follow-up question. Is there like a catalog or something if I'm an employee and I want to know, oh, gee, not for mandatory training, obviously, but I mean, that would be inclusive as well. But is there a follow-up catalog or something that as an employee I could go and say, hey, I really need to sharpen my skills on technical writing or whatever whatever the need may be, that I could, as an employee, go and say, yeah, this is probably a course that would benefit me. How would I find that out as an employee?
Sure. There's two ways that happens. One is we have a website that's on the city website, internal to city employees, where we have a list of all the courses that we offer. And also that catalog is also available in the employees portal to the learning management system. So they can log into their ELM portal. They can see every course that's in there. And then some courses we have calendar scheduled. Then there's other courses that we offer by demand, and a lot of courses are online, so they can be delivered at any given time. We also have another tool that we use called Knowledge City, which is a digital computer-based training platform that has over 12,000 different training courses in leadership, Microsoft, the Microsoft suite, all different types of employee leadership and development training as well, that every employee of the city can get access to a license to be able to take those training courses as well. So obviously, usually what happens, somebody will see a course on the website. We put advertisements on eWeb often for trainings that we're offering. And then when an employee has a desire to take a course, what we'll do is we'll go through, we'll find them the right training that they need for their desired outcome. And then we'll schedule them for that, whether it be online or face-to-face, and get them into a training plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for answering my questions. That was very inclusive, and I'm really glad to see that you're encouraging that for our employees.
Thank you so much. If there are no further questions or comments, Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a roll call vote for the receipt be noted.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Basan,
Yes.
passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will be moving on to agenda item F, which is EC 436 FY21 Goal 3, Objective 4 City Planner Salary Study. I move a receipt be noted. Thank you, Councilor Sena and Councilor Pena. Any questions or comments, councilors? Councilor Pena?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to hear from some folks at the planning department. I know we're having a few challenges there, and I'd just like to see if they're looking at, down the road, adjusting some of our positions, because it's saying that the qualifications that we have for jobs don't mesh with the pay. So it looks like Mr. Aranda's getting on there. So if we could defer to him. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Aranda, I think that would be a great question. I had the same ones. What are we going to do about making qualifications meet pay grade or vice versa?
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, thank you for your question. The report does have some recommendations in terms of kind of evening out the pay scale compared to what some of the duties and qualifications are. If you look at the city, we tend to have pretty high expectations of qualifications considering area agencies. And so one of the things that we are considering really is working on adjusting job descriptions and qualifications to where they aren't expecting an experienced high-level planner for, let's say, an M13 or M15 level position. So it's a mixed bag of things. I think the biggest question and issue we have right now, aside from the heightened qualifications, is the fact that pay is uneven, not only amongst other agencies, but even within the city itself. And so for us, the ideas we have are really supporting the recommendations that are in this particular report. I'm not sure if that specifically answers your question or if you would like me to continue, but that's kind of what I have, right now.
Councilor Pena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the sake of time, I think maybe offline we should continue this conversation, but I'm supportive of the receipt we noted.
I appreciate that. Madam Chair, thank you. Councilor, thank you.
And Councilor Borrego, I see your hand up. I have more questions following up with this. Is yours new or shall we?
No, I was going to ask a question about this.
Please do.
Madam Chair. So I'm excited to see that you guys are doing this study and that, positions are being looked at. One of the questions that I have is with regard to APA, encouraging planners to join APA or AICP testing for their certification. And I just wonder how that's being encouraged. And I know we don't have a lot of money for it, but yeah.
Madam Chair, Councillor Borrego, thank you for your question. One of the things specific to APA and AICP certification is the department currently covers annual fees for APA. We also will cover the testing fee for AICP. And so that's how we encourage planners to kind of get certified and do those things, is by covering those costs when they can show that it's directly related to their job and their employment with the city of Albuquerque. When it comes to doing like CM trainings, things like that, like ongoing training, again, it's the same thing. We'll cover registration fees when possible. And then of course, they're considered right now, because there's not a lot of travel being allowed, everything is online. So we allow for trainings. I mean, we encourage a lot of training, ongoing training, whether it's internal within the city or external amongst different planning agencies and organizations. So we highly encourage, we cover fees when we can, when it's feasible, and we allow the time for planners to kind of take out to go do that ongoing training as part of their jobs.
And can you just get back with me when you get a minute, and not online, but what amount of training budget you all have, please?
Amount of training and our budget? Okay, I will. Madam Chair, Councillor, thank you for that.
Thank you. I have some more questions. I guess I would like to know specifically, in regards to kind of Councilor Pena's question, are we looking at lowering the qualifications, or are we looking at hopefully giving raises to make this a more level expectation and position?
Madam Chair, I think primarily is raising salaries, but we also recognize that the qualifications do tend to be a little bit high. So I would say, again, it's a mixed bag. Primarily, the main fix, and I know it's never a good thing to say, oh, we need to spend more money, is raising wages. That's a serious issue that needs to happen. We're supportive of it, but we're also open to other potential techniques and strategies for doing that. One of which, as we've mentioned, is looking at that lineup of qualifications to applicants. The third option is even probably less popular, and it's not necessarily addressed by the salary studies itself, is we need to take a look at our staffing levels within the planning department. I currently oversee 15 people, and it's the planning department, and I oversee the planning function, and that is not enough staff to adequately conduct all the planning activities that are needed and all the requests that come of us. I've told our director before, we're adequately staffed for a really small place, let's say like Valencia County, that size of population. We don't have the overall capacity and resources to just continually manage the number of requests. And so that's the third thing. It's not really mentioned here, is we need to take a serious look at the overall staffing structure throughout the department, but specifically within UD&D, within the planning functions, and we need to bolster those staffing levels.
And I completely agree with that. And in addition to that, which leads me to one of my other questions, what is the plan for either retention of employees or attracting new employees, especially if we're not paying them? Like if you want the best, we should be paying for the best, right? And so if our qualifications are up here, but we're only paying down here, this group of people that we're speaking with right now is going to be really helpful in making sure that we can arrange for that. But at the same time, what if we're not going to be doing raises anytime soon, or are we? Could you do raises soon if you want, or would we just wait till the next budget cycle? So that's one question. When would raises happen? And then the next one is, what's the plan for retention or attracting new employees so that we can build up that base?
Yes. Madam Chair, the first question in regard to when could salary studies happen, in having discussions with our budget officer, we are thinking budget cleanup may be a chance to capture a couple of those, because we do have salary savings. And then the next annual budget would be then the next kind of benchmark in terms of specific to the salaries. Now, as far as the other options, These are things that we are still kind of discussing internally. Right now, as you know, we have an interim leader. And so leadership is in the process of huddling to figure out what are other strategies we can do to address some of the turnover. I mean, one of the small things is just looking at our internal operations, you know, who reports to who, kind of what are the kind of reassessing kind of everything everybody has on their shoulders. And this is specific to what I'm doing in UD&D, and reassigning particular duties, working with supervisors, kind of working on management skills, these types of things, employee relationships, how people have that ability to kind of dictate and delegate duties, those types of things, the soft benefits, that's what we can do right now immediately, is kind of creating a little bit more harmonic internal working environment. And then, like I said, just continually having a continued conversation with HR about what it's going to take to kind of realign some of those job qualifications. That's been an ongoing conversation. I believe Mr. Romero and I have not had a chance, since we've both been in, to have an in-depth conversation on that, but it has been something we've been talking about for probably going on a year now with previous HR directors. So those are a couple of the things that we're working on to address our turnover issues that we are having in the department.
And then I just have one more comment to finish up my thread, and then I'm going to go to Councilor Borrego and Councilor Pena. But and I know I don't know everything. I know that I'm not a specialist in anything, but at the same time, it just doesn't seem logical to me that we have salary savings when we're underpaying planners. So that's mind blowing to me. Oh, director, you under, yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why do we have salary savings if we're seeing that we're not leveling out with that? So that's more of a comment, unless there's some kind of response you have to that, but.
Yeah. Madam Chair, the primary, at least the salary savings that I'm aware of within my division, is specific to the E19 manager. That's been basically a vacant position for going on a year now. We went through a hiring process. We had a selection. We weren't able to get approval in enough time, and that selection moved on. We have a number of those particular situations where you'll have a vacancy that may be a high-level vacancy, and really there's only a handful of people within the state that are going to take that job, and it takes a lot of optimal kind of situations for it to happen, and any kind of little mistake or mess up in the equation throws it off. And so that's some savings does come from just how long some of these vacancies are held. I'll defer to Mr. Romero for any continued discussion on that matter as well.
Well, thank you, Deputy Director Aranda. Chairwoman Basan. You know, in the final proposed recommendations, we do see that we definitely want to be comparable to other local government agencies. And so we have a really good total compensation package. Our benefits, as you'll see in there, is the best of the folks that we looked at and that our class and compensation team looked at. But we do see and find that we do need to put about 5 of those positions that are listed in the recommendations. We do need to raise those steps for those positions so that we can be more comparable and we can recruit and retain individuals to those planning positions that are critical to the success of our city. So we definitely have that there in the final recommendations. And as James said, we'd be happy to talk to you at any time about more in-depth discussions about what we can do, but we think this is a good starting point for sure.
Awesome. Good to hear. It seems like it's definitely one of those that the timeline of hiring people is a common thread in the city operations. So Councilor Borrego.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Chair. So I would definitely not support lowering our standards for professional planners. And I want to put that on the record right off the bat, Mr. Romero and Mr. Aranda. Planning degrees usually require a secondary degree. And so these people have worked very hard, and it also requires ongoing certifications, usually especially with APA or AICP, as we mentioned earlier. So, and it's similar, I think about it similarly to nurses or attorneys and their ongoing education. If you remember some time ago, about a year ago, I passed a bill that I sponsored regarding supporting training for all of our departments and ensuring that whether you have a degree or a certification, that those be encouraged and that we pay, we look at the pay scale equitably. So I would ask you to maybe go back and get that bill and just take a look at it again. And, it really just ensures that we have a more professional city staff as we move forward and for all of our departments. So I just wanted to be on the record, Madam Chair, to say that I'm not in favor of lowering our standards at all. So I think that we need to look at our budget in the future to compete, especially as we're trying to compete regionally. It's important that we have those professional staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brego. Councilor Pena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't going to really comment too much more, but I just did want to say that, just looking at the report and seeing that, we are underpaying, but we have higher qualifications. So I think this study, the result of this study should just be looked at real closely when we're evaluating this, because it does also, which is encouraging, say that the city's benefit package exceeds the benefit packages of jurisdictions who provide the same salary. So, I think that's an important part of the equation too, and I guess that we should highlight that we do have a great benefits package, but with all that, the work needed to make sure that the pay mirrors the qualifications. And if the particular job doesn't require that extensive of qualifications, then they should be adjusted accordingly. So I think there's some really good information in here, and I hope we look at it all and not necessarily, I'm all about making sure people get paid what they need to get paid, but make sure that we really look at some of these other recommendations just to help improve the department overall. And then my suggestion is that I really believe, and I don't know what kind of technology is out there, not technology, but software out there, just to make it just more efficient in terms of how we do our permitting, how we go out to give the permitting process when people are out there. I think there's got to be software out there that can help actually save the department money and time with, I think we have kind of an antiquated system and that we call in for a permit approval, and we kind of have to wait, and they wait, and we wait, and everyone waits. And I think we can really work on looking at that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Varela, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Bassan and respected council members. We very much appreciate your questions today. I do want to make very clear that the planning department and the administration would never consider as a serious option lowering standards. We most definitely respect the professionals that we have on board, and our goal is obviously to get more people at that caliber. We're very interested in the results of this planning study. It has a lot of very good objective information for us that confirms, I think, why we have an existing vacancy rate and turnover rate that we do in that area. And so we'll be looking at how to implement these salary treatments as soon as possible. And so I expect that you'll be hearing from the administration sometime sooner rather than later, and certainly not waiting until next fiscal year starts in order for us to start remedying this situation, to keep the good people that we have and respect so much, and to fill the vacant positions that we have. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Director. And then I have one question, and then I'll go back to you, Mr. Romero. But do we know where these planners are going?
And Chairperson Bassan, yes, good question. And council members, some of them are going to other departments where they find that they can perhaps make the same amount of pay and have fewer responsibilities. Some are reaching retirement age, and instead of staying, they're leaving. We had a very senior planner leave recently, rather than stay and go to the private sector, where that person could make quite a bit more money. And so they're looking around at the other options that they have, and they're finding that even though the city benefits are tremendous, that perhaps for short-term gain purposes, that it's more profitable to leave city employment at this time. But we're confident that the information that's in this report, which does show that people could be and should be paid more, is going to help us curb that.
Thank you. Director Romero?
I just wanted to also remind folks, as you're out there helping us recruit planners, the planner M15, E15 position does have a hiring incentive. It's one of those difficult to fill positions that we're offering a $750 hiring incentive. And then just something that I am I feel very good about with this group of employees. I know we have a lot of work to go on, but I do feel that they have a great career ladder in the city for planners. There's a good career path that's sort of set out there in different steps, going from your, I just lost your associate planner all the way up to a principal planner. So there's a nice succession plan there. And I think that that's one of the benefits, along with our benefits package, that we could also promote. Is you can come in at an M13 and you could really promote all the way up to a director level. So that's a good thing to sort of keep at the top of our minds when we're talking about these positions to folks. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think good dialogue. So, Ms. Hinojos, I think if we can take a vote on receipt be noted, that would be lovely.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. Moving on to agenda item G, 076 is sponsored by Councilor Jones. I will go ahead and move a due pass for adopting a uniform administrative code and technical codes prescribing minimum standards regulating the construction, alteration, moving, repair, and use of and occupancies of buildings and structures and building service equipment and installations, including plumbing, swimming pools, electrical, mechanical, science, solar, energy conservation, building conservation, and the abatement of dangerous buildings within the city of Albuquerque, providing for the issuance of permits and collecting fees therefore, repealing Chapter 14, Article 1, ROA 1994, the present Uniform Administrative Code, and technical codes including the building code and the plumbing code, the swimming pool code, the mechanical code, the solar energy code, the electrical code, and providing for penalties for violation of the code. Thank you so much, Councilor Sena, for that. I feel like that was almost like a commercial. Any questions or comments, councilors? No? Okay, well, I have questions. I have questions if we have someone here. I just am I want to make sure, like, to preface this, I fully support elevators being maintained by the property owners that the elevator exists in. I don't think that the city should be the one to do all the work. However, I'm wondering, and it's been brought to my attention, how are we checking up on this? Are we still going to do some enforcement of making sure that people still are inspecting their elevators and that they're operating safely? Or are we just like moving away from that? Mr. Clark, maybe?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Len Clark. I'm the Chief Building Official. To answer your question directly, the checking up will, like everywhere else in the state of New Mexico, be the responsibility of the building owner. Many states have auditing programs, but most of those originate at a state level, not at a municipal level. But the idea is that of these, there's 700 plus properties in Albuquerque that have elevators, they would now become the responsibility of the owner, not the city subsidizing those inspections.
And I mean, I get that, I think, but I also am so concerned because I don't want to be in an elevator that nobody's maintaining. So how do we make sure that people do? I mean, we're living in the time where I feel like some people are cutting corners, right? If people aren't holding them accountable. So how do we make sure, or would it maybe be more prudent for us to find a way to hire 2 inspectors back instead of getting rid of them from before?
Well, Madam Chair, I don't know about the prudence, but like any other place, any other place in New Mexico and elsewhere in the country, those little certificates that nobody reads in every elevator car, that's the way you can determine if the elevator has been inspected and safe by a QEI, a certified elevator inspector. And you know, I've certainly been in elevators elsewhere in the state where that certificate is dated in the 70s, and I'm taking the stairs.
Thank you. That's fair enough. I do read those, and I will make sure to check them before the doors close from now on. And thank you for that. Counselor Senna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this is pretty similar. I mean, whether it's an elevator or a boiler, as we're reading through this code, and we just had this pretty lengthy discussion when it came to planning for our code enforcement. I know some of this, falls into the line of our fire marshal's office too, at least in terms of safety. So I guess I just appreciate the concern that our chair is presenting, because I think it's whether it's an elevator or something else. If we have follow-up and other inspectors that are doing that, that's kind of where I see is necessary, especially when it comes to a lot of this. And of course, if it's a new building, then a lot of these inspections are occurring. But if this is a more updated version and we have other older buildings falling out of compliance, that's a tricky subject. So like Councilor Bassan, I guess I will be checking elevators and my boilers as well.
Any other questions or comments, councilors?
I will say, Madam Chair Basant, that is the best reading of that ordinance I've heard, and we have to read it every year or two. So you did very well.
Thank you. I like to try to keep it fresh. We shouldn't always be bored with what we do. If there's no further comments or questions, Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a roll call vote.
Councilor Borrego,
No.
Councilor Pena, Councilor Pena,
Councilor Pena, you're muted.
Is there, once a vote has started, is there any way to make a motion for deferral?
Madam Chair, I would take my vote back and we could defer this because I'm completely uncomfortable. I think part of planning's responsibility is, and I should have said this earlier, but part of planning's responsibility is public safety and the health, wellness, and general welfare of the public, and I see it being compromised. And I didn't think the reasoning was adequate.
Madam Chair, I see folks from the mayor's conference room kind of pop in. Is there any way we can see if they had something to add?
Yes, we sure can.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, I don't think we have a problem, like a deferral will be fine, but I do want the members of the committee to know that when the fire department goes and does inspections of building, they do look at certificates for elevators to make sure that they have received their inspection. So it's not like anybody's not going to do anything if this ordinance passes, but a deferral is fine. If you would like, what we can do is have some more information provided to you at the next FGO meeting, if that's what the council prefers.
So Madam Chair, if I think just more information, because I just want to make sure that there are some inspections. I think maybe that's where Councilor Borrego is looking to, and I think you alluded to that, Madam Chair, is that just to ensure there are inspections and that we can ensure that the public feels comfortable and not feeling like they have to read a certificate when they get into an elevator, but just there are some assurances out there. I think just a little bit more information. So if Councilor, I don't know what the Roberts rules on this, but I'd like to make a motion for deferral to the next FGO meeting.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That's the Roberts rules. Good job. So we will go ahead and take a vote on deferral till the next FGO meeting.
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Pena,
Yes.
Council Sena,
Yes.
Council Basan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you, counselors. I guess that means I get to read that again. So buckle up. We're going to move on to agenda item H, 077. This is for Counselor Davis, who I do know is still with us, it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and move 077, amending Article 20 of Chapter 13 of the Revised Ordinances of Albuquerque, the Albuquerque Tax Preparer and Consumer Rights Ordinance regarding requirements for tax preparation services. I move it to pass. Counselor Sena, thank you for the second. Counselor Davis, I know that we have some amendments that we'll get to, but did you want to say anything to begin with?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for allowing me to present to the committee this afternoon. I think we've all seen this bill one time before. Late last year, the administration brought us a consumer protection bill designed to provide more transparency for persons having taxes prepared at all types of locations around the city. And to be honest, that piece of legislation went through some advocacy groups and stakeholders. But we found after passing it that a number of stakeholders had not participated as they had wished. And honestly, there were some pieces of the legislation that needed some cleanup. And so we've been working with the tax preparers, the Enrolled Agents Association and others and the administration for several months to come up with some amendments that would allow people to understand their rights and still ensure that the professional standards of tax preparers from CPAs and enrolled agents, et cetera, are recognized and that we can work with those groups. So we have a number of technical experts that are available to answer committee questions. As you mentioned, there are a couple of amendments. I know Councilor Sena has one in particular. I'm not sure how many others there are. And so I would defer to the chair and the committee on how you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Counselor. First, does the Mayor's Conference Room want to say anything on the overall bill before we move the amendments?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, what we would also, we do have some people here that would like to speak, but I was wondering if we could get a copy of those amendments so we can look at them.
Yes.
Okay. And Marty, I'll go ahead and let you explain some of the changes that were made.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. This is Mari Kempton with the Office of Consumer Protection. And as Councilor Davis pointed out, this was originally passed as a consumer protection bill. It has essentially two requirements: that the tax preparer tell people how much they're going to charge them and what their qualifications are to prepare taxes. It is not a burdensome bill. And this was one of the areas that was of great concern to consumer advocates in Albuquerque, as well as around the US, that this is essentially an unregulated industry at the state and the federal level. There is no minimum training required to be a tax preparer, and there are no substantive requirements for them to even give price disclosures. So one of the big drivers of this was just that people know what fees they're going to be charged upfront so that they can do price shopping and make an educated decision when they're shopping for tax preparation services. So with that, I would just ask that the council, in considering these amendments, also keep in mind the purpose of this bill, and in order to incentivize tax preparers to follow the bill, there do need to be effective consequences for violations. And it appears that some of these amendments proposed by the corporate industry and some of the biggest corporate tax preparers in America are kind of asking for it to be stripped out so that it's more voluntary compliance, or that there would be no consequences until after this administrative process goes through. So, and I'm happy to answer any other specific questions you might have.
Thank you. Mr. Padilla, you should have them now. I will say personally, in regards to the amendments that I have seen that we are about to move, this is something that I discussed in my briefing last week. So I don't think that they are probably going to be anything too extreme with stripping the protection and the rights for enforcement. But again, that's my opinion. Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I may, I just wanted to respond to the administration's comments there to sort of set the stage. Available to the committee, should they choose, is Mr. Andy Schultz. Andy is an attorney here with the Rhodey Law Firm, so he knows New Mexico law well. And as we all know, we've all become familiar with Rhodey's local work as well. He's been working on this with the folks who do tax preparation. And although I respect very much the administration's purpose here, I want to dispute some of their assertions that things that we learned. I carried this by request because I was the council president at the time that it was introduced. And we learned after the fact that some of those assertions, quite frankly, just weren't as true as we thought. All of our tax preparers, for example, like enrolled agents, are called enrolled agents. They're not CPAs, they're called enrolled agents because they're enrolled with the IRS and have to meet training and professional standards. And there's a complaint process for violation. Additionally, I'm going to use the wrong word that our professionals would be mad at me for, but sort of the seasonal employees like the Jackson Hewitt or H&R Block are also regulated and registered with the IRS. And so although I do think there are a number of folks, and we've heard those stories of people taking advantage, particularly of our elderly or immigrant population, who have a hard time comprehending those really complex forms. I think what we found was that that the need for this city to create a license or a regulatory scheme for this is probably necessary for transparency in terms of disclosure, but maybe not for the registration. And so some of these are intended to address some of those concerns today. And thank you for the patience, Madam Chair. I'll defer to you and how you want to take those.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Moya, are you able to put up on the screen? I was going to do it as they're in the iPad. Counselor Borrego, do you have a question before we get started on that?
I do, Madam Chair. So earlier this afternoon, I talked with some folks from the industry who had sent me some proposed changes, and I forwarded those on to legal for comment. And I also talked with Councilor Davis earlier, and I think that we may have had some of the same amendments that I know I was prepared to maybe bring those forward at council, but I wasn't prepared to deal with them today because I honestly had not been able to get a response yet from the legal department. So I'm not sure if these are the same amendments that I was preparing, or if so. I'm somewhat uncomfortable, honestly, Councilor Davis, because as we spoke this afternoon, I thought we were going to sit down and talk about some of the amendments that you have and some of the amendments that I have to see if they're the same amendments or not.
So, well, I think that we have 5 amendments. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 amendments being proposed tonight. I think that we can go ahead and proceed with them with the ability to be able to make additional amendments at full council should this pass tonight. Unless we want to defer. No? Okay.
Madam President, Councilor Davis, I'm wondering if I guess we could listen to the amendments and then decide how we want to vote on them. But not having a response from legal on some of the ones that I'm looking at, I'm just a little uncomfortable, but I guess we could always move it to full council without a recommendation.
Okay, so Mr. Moya, if you can, I don't know if that was one of those that we could go ahead and put on the board, but I was going to do the certificate of compliance as Amendment 1.
Okay, let me just,
It's the
Got
first one in our iPad. I'm willing to go in other order if that's easier, but that's the first one listed in our iPad.
no, that's fine, Madam Chair. You can just give me like the little title and I'll pull up whichever one you request.
Okay, thank you so much. So I would like to move Amendment 1, which is on page 12, line 31, strike the word compliance and replace with acknowledgement. On page 12 through 13, strike lines 32 through 33 and 1 through 4 and replace with the following. No later than February 1st of each year in which a tax preparer will engage in business pursuant to this part, the tax preparer shall file with the city attorney a certification declaring that the tax preparer has read each applicable provision of this part and intends to comply in good faith. The certification shall be on a form or declaration designated by the city attorney and available on the city website. The explanation is a proactive approach to informing tax preparers of the ordinance would serve the remedial purpose of enforcement as well. The city should consider implementing a way to assure that tax preparers are aware of the ordinance prior to each tax season. The current certification of compliance, on the other hand, is retrospective in nature and is designed to penalize rather than educate and make compliance more likely. As it stands, it fails to capture an opportunity to engage with tax preparers before they work with consumers. While the city attorney has suggested that this certification will help track compliance with the ordinance, that function would now be served by the proposed notice, demand, and opportunity to correct provisions. As an added vehicle to encourage familiarity with the ordinance, we would propose amending the certification of compliance to a certification of acknowledgement, which would require annual acknowledgement by the tax preparer of awareness or of the ordinance and the intent to comply. So I move Amendment 1. Is there a second? Councilor Pena, I see your hand up. Councilor Sena. Any questions or comments? Councilor Davis, would you like to elaborate on? I tried to read it, giving full disclosure for everybody and time for the
Madam Chair, you
to
did
see.
so with enthusiasm as well, and I appreciate that, giving your non-boring ways to make this kind of move forward. No, thanks. I think this makes sense. It basically says that preparers have to know the rules before they get started. And it seems like a way for us to ensure that that happens. And I think that seems to me like a fairly straightforward process. So if a preparer brings on a new seasonal employee, they can read the ordinance, file the form, and we have on record that they know what they're doing. And of course, I think this follows for later, but should a complaint be filed or should someone from the city determine that someone is not complying, this will make it super easy to check to see if they have followed the ordinance and filed their notice of acceptance or acknowledgement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Borrego.
So I have a question, and I'm not sure who's prepared to answer this, but the question is, if they're not in compliance, then what is the consequence? Is there a fine? How, I mean, what is, I mean, if they're not in compliance, then who puts the hammer down on their head and what is the penalty?
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, I can respond to that. So under the current ordinance, there is a penalty for each violation, which is the general penalties ordinance, which applies to multiple city ordinances for any violation. It appears to me that under one of the other proposed amendments that's going to be brought up, there would be a process where the notice of violation has to be issued before any penalty kicks in. So for this, for example, if a business doesn't file their certificate of compliance, City Legal would have to send this notification. The business would then, presumably file the certification, and then they would not be subject to any penalty for filing it late.
So a follow-up question, who pays the penalty, the business itself or the individual? I mean, who is held liable?
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, so the business or the tax preparer, tax preparer could be a business or it could be an individual, but the tax preparer is required to file that certificate of compliance. So they would also be required to pay any penalty assessed.
And is the business held accountable as well? I mean, if they have someone working for them, they're responsible for that employee. So I'm just curious about that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, so how we have it in the FAQs right now is that the business is the tax preparer. So if there is a business with multiple preparers, it's not that each individual has to file a separate certificate. It's just one for the business. And so the business would be liable.
So the business would have to check to see if the tax preparer has filed their paper. And then if they have not, and if they're working there and they're penalized, then the business is going to be held responsible?
No, so the business would just have to ensure that one person on behalf of the business files the certificate. It does not require each individual tax preparer to file a separate certificate.
So the business files for all the employees, is what you're saying, right?
Correct. In a scenario where there was a business with multiple preparers in it, they would just have to make sure that one person files it for the business.
Councilor Borrego, if I may, if it would be okay with you, I would like to call Mr. Schultz back in because he's someone I spoke with last week. I know on part of this request and why I think, and Councilor Davis, if you want to clarify if this is perhaps where your thought process is going as well, why this amendment might have been chosen to be moved forward and the benefits of it. And then we can go back to the mayor's conference room to see if they agree or not.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And I just have one question. You started off, we were talking about the certification of compliance. We've sort of morphed into another proposed amendment that has not yet been moved. So I just wanted some clarification as to what you would like me to speak about.
Councilor Borrego, going back to you, and I would like to know if you want Mr. Schultz to answer part of the question as to this amendment and the enforcement factor of it. Because if I'm correct, that's where we started.
That's exactly where I'm at, Councilor. Thank you. I was trying to get back there because my question was again with, who's liable? Is it the tax preparer who has to file the paper or the business? I mean, if the business has 12 people and one of them has not filed their paper, then the business is going to be penalized. And that's how it seems to me, but I'm not clearer on that. So, and this is the reason that I was waiting for my responses from legal.
Mr. Schultz, do you have an answer to that from your perspective?
Well, sure. Let me start to make it very, very clear. The idea behind this was to ensure, as we heard from City Legal and we heard from Councilor Davis, the idea is to ensure greater transparency. We want to make sure that tax preparers understand their obligations and that they are prepared to follow through with their obligations with all taxpayers. The amendment, the first amendment, the idea on the certificate of compliance is to make sure that people are making that representation at the beginning of the tax season rather than at the end. The next step, and Councilor Borrego, this follows into your question, is so what happens if someone doesn't file that certificate of compliance? As the ordinance is written right now, the only way for a taxpayer who believes that he or she has been injured for them to seek any type of recourse is for them to go out and hire a lawyer in order to possibly bring a claim for whatever damages could be proven, or up to $100, whichever is greater, and with the possibility of the attorney being able to recover attorney's fees. What Councilor Davis's proposed amendment changes is to make this ordinance more in line with other consumer protection ordinances. For example, the minimum wage ordinance, which when there is a problem, city legal is contacted. They provide notice of the deficiency. They ask for a correction. And then the taxpayer who is potentially at fault then has the opportunity to make that correction. None of that requires the taxpayer to go out and hire a lawyer. Now, and this is important, if it turns out that after this administrative process, which is the same as you see in many other city ordinances, if after that administrative process, the tax preparer still hasn't come into compliance, at that point, the consumer does have the opportunity, does have the option to then seek legal redress. But like so many other city ordinances, Counselor, the proposed amendment from Counselor Davis allows for notice of the deficiency, a demand for correction, and an opportunity for correction, all at no expense to the taxpayer and all without the need for an attorney to get involved.
And Madam Chair, follow-up question. So if the taxpayer or the client, I guess, in this case, files against the tax preparer or the business, who is responsible? Who's liable? The tax preparer individually or the business?
And Madam Chair, if I may respond to Councilor Borrego, the question you raise is a very good one, Counselor. In most cases, now we're totally out of this ordinance, and now we're into basic employment law. And employees, generally, their liability is passed on possibly to the employer. The employer becomes what's known as vicariously liable for the acts of their employees or their agents. That doctrine actually serves a great benefit to the potentially harmed consumer, because more likely than not, the tax preparer will be better able to shoulder the financial burden of any liability, which means there is a higher, greater likelihood that the consumer can be made whole for whatever damages they are able to sustain and show.
Thank you, sir. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Borrego. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. How about the mayor's conference room?
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, I just wanted to clarify that under the current ordinance, it is not correct that a consumer's only right is to get a lawyer and sue. Specifically on page 9, line 1, what's relabeled as subdivision H, it says a consumer has the right to file a complaint with the city regarding a tax preparer, and the city could then file an enforcement. So it's just not correct that that's not in the current ordinance. That is in the current ordinance. And in our discussions with industry around this amendment, the industry was mainly complaining about the potential for per day violations of stacking up of fees under the general penalty ordinance. So we heard that complaint, and in our amendment, we proposed to limit the violations that would potentially lead to those stacking per day violations to only 4 very basic requirements, which are having a business license, being registered with the IRS to prepare taxes, filing the certificate of compliance, and having the required posting at the place of business, because those are, very basic business requirements for the city of Albuquerque. So any other violations, for a particular consumer, failing to give a disclosure, something of that nature, it is a violation, but it doesn't stack up on a per day basis. So there's not the potential for those stacking fees, which is what the industry had told us was their main concern.
Thank you for that. So I've had a change of heart. I would like to withdraw my motion for this amendment. And I hope that I think Councilor Senna, you're okay with that. Thank you. So Counselor Senna says, okay, thumbs up. So, I mean, the administration didn't quite get copies of the proposed amendments. Counselor Borrego, you've discussed that, you have some things in the works and you want to work further with Counselor Davis. And I am prepared to say, I would like to make a motion for deferral of this ordinance to the next meeting so that there can be some time to work through all of this. Counselor Senna, I see that you're seconding that. Counselor Borrego, thank you. Counselor Davis, I hope, okay, respectfully, I just want to make sure we're not screwing anything up too drastically. But Counselor Borrego, okay, so I would like to do that. And if there's any other questions or comments from the counselors, that way we can have some more time. Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote on the deferral to the next FGO meeting, please.
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Pena,
Yes.
Council Sena,
Yes.
Council Bassan.
Yes,
Motion on the deferral passes unanimously.
thank you. Counselor Senna, did you have a question?
Yeah, just when is the next FGO meeting? It's October 25th, is that correct?
That is correct, Counselor.
Thank you, Ms. Hinojos. Okay, so moving on to agenda item I, Counselor Borrego.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion for a 90-day with deferral.
And this is for R122.
Let me just make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Counselor Senna.
Sorry, I can see and then I can't see.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Counselor Senna, for the second. Any questions or comments, counselors? Ms. Hinojos?
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Pena,
Yes.
Council Sena.
Yes.
Council Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
We will move on to agenda item J, R190. Counselor Pena?
Thank you, Chair, but I'll defer to you because this second go around is really your lead. I'm just supporting you.
Sounds good. I will make a motion for a due pass for approving an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Albuquerque, the County of Bernalillo, and the Albuquerque Public School District Board of Education to reform the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Government Commission as the local government coordinating commission to include the City of Albuquerque, the County of Bernalillo, and the Albuquerque Public Schools as the voting members. I move a due pass. Thank you, Counselor Senna, Counselor Pena for a second. Counselors, do you have any questions or comments regarding this? Well, thank you very much. Okay, well, Ms. Hinojos.
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Pena,
Yes.
Council Sena.
Yes.
Council Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Counselor Senna, do you want to go to agenda item K, R192?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. R192 is requiring the City of Albuquerque to enter into a project labor agreement with the construction partners performing the construction of a new multi-purpose soccer stadium upon the bond approval by New Mexico voters on the November 2021 ballot. I'm going to move a deferral until the next FGO meeting.
Counselor Borrego with a second. Any questions or comments?
And just to clarify, Madam Chair, again, this next FGO is October 25th.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering if the sponsors have contacted the unions regarding this particular bill, if we've contacted the city.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote on the deferral.
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Pena,
Yes.
Council Sena.
Yes.
Council Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Agenda item L is sponsored by Counselor Gibson. It's R194. I will go ahead and make the motion. It's amending the memorandum of agreement between the City of Albuquerque Parks and Recreation and New Mexico Department of Agriculture in fiscal year 2021. I move it to pass. Counselor Sena, thank you for the second. Director or Counselor Borrego, was that a second? Okay. Director Simon, are you with us still? And would you like to share about this legislation?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This is just a technical correction to a resolution that the council passed earlier this year. Unfortunately, in the original text of the resolution, it had a mistake in the fiscal year and also to the correct fund that this grant should be applied. So this resolution will clean that up. We've already completed the pollinator project, so it's bookkeeping, but we want to make sure it's done correctly.
Thank you, Director. I hope that went really well. Counselors, any questions? Ms. Hinojos, if you will please take a vote.
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Peña,
Yes.
Council Sena,
Yes.
Council Basan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Counselor Borrego, agenda item M is R198, if you will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This particular bill, I move a do pass, and basically what it is it's approving and authorizing grant funds from the Department of Commerce, Minority Business Development Agency. And I don't know if Damon Lara is with us, but he can explain it further in the amount. And there will be, I think, a floor substitute regarding this a little bit later on.
Okay, for the record, Counselor Sena did offer a second. Director Lara or Ms. Marquez, would you care to elaborate on this, or shall we do the floor sub first?
Either way, Madam Chair, similar as to the other bill, this is really a technical cleanup in extending the fiscal years. The original fiscal year was from 21 to 22. We're extending that fiscal year for the authorization of the grant from fiscal years 22 through 2026. And so we would like that as well as immediate action, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you. Counselor Borrego?
I urge your support.
Okay, we're going to move a floor substitute for R198. I'll go ahead and make that motion. Thank you, Counselor Sena.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we not have to vote on the original bill and then the floor sub?
I believe that we need to vote on the floor sub so that we can approve the original bill as amended.
So I had already moved the original bill and a second was provided. So we're going to do the floor sub. Okay, thank you.
I see the mayor's conference room.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I apologize. I think I put my hand up a little too early. I was just going to request immediate action on this after you guys have moved it and voted for it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding the floor sub? Ms. Hinojos?
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Peña,
Yes.
Council Sena.
Yes.
Council Basan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Counselor Borrego?
Urge your support. And I would also like to make that motion for immediate action after this, if possible.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take a vote on R198 as substituted.
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Peña,
Yes.
Council Sena.
Yes.
Council Basan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. I will second Counselor Borrego's motion for immediate action. Ms. Hinojos?
Council Borrego,
Yes.
Council Peña,
Yes.
Council Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will move on to agenda item N. R199 is also sponsored by Counselor Gibson. This is approving and authorizing the acceptance of grant funds from the Dennis Friends Foundation and providing an appropriation to the City of Albuquerque Animal Welfare Department in fiscal year 22. I move a do pass. Thank you, Counselor Sena. Counselor Borrego with a second. Any questions or comments, counselors? Counselor Sena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say, I know that the Dennis Friends Foundation is not on today, but really to extend our gratitude to them for really also helping out in purchasing all of the medical equipment from the veterinary clinic that we got to open. Was it a week ago? I can't remember our dates, but getting to tour that facility, it was really incredible. And thank you to all of our partners, and thank you to Director Ortega for really fulfilling that, and also to our veterinarian, our lead veterinarian. I know that was, and this has been the work of some time, so I just wanted to extend my appreciation.
Thank you, Counselor. Director, I see you here if you'd like to say anything.
Thank you. We are so grateful for the money that Dennis Friends has provided to us. It really allowed us to move the project so quickly, not to mention the support of the council and the support of administration. So we really appreciate all of this continued support. And it's actually the second time that Dennis Friends has donated $300,000 to animal welfare. So we hope that because we're able to move things so quickly and be so innovative, that they'll continue to support us. So thank you for all of your support.
Thank you so much, Director. Any other questions or comments, counselors? Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote, please.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Agenda item O is R200. Counselor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. R200 is approving and authorizing the acceptance of grants funds based on an application from the New Mexico Aging and Long-Term Services Department for state assistance from New Mexico Local Grown Produce Grant for the purpose of providing seniors with nutritious meals from food that is grown in New Mexico, and providing for an appropriation to the Department of Senior Affairs in fiscal year 2022. I move it to pass.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. Counselor Borrego, that's a second. Thank you, ma'am. Counselors, any questions or comments? Host.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Counselor Sena, if you want to go ahead with R201.
Thank you, Madam Chair. R201 is approving submittal of grant applications by the Parks and Recreation Department to the New Mexico Finance Authority Water Trust Board, and providing an appropriation to the Parks and Recreation Department for fiscal year 2022. I move it to pass.
I will second that motion. Counselors, any questions or comments? All right, Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Counselor Sena, do you want to help Mr. Padilla?
Yes, I will move for immediate action on this item.
Thank you. I will second that. Counselor Borrego seconds it. Mr. Padilla, did I read your mind through? Okay, awesome. Thank you. And Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. Counselors, there being no further business, this FGO meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.